Buenos dias. So good to see all of you folks here. We're happy to have you with us as we talk about a wonderful mission trip that we took to Cuba this year. And as you can see, it's a lovely place. So I guess I'll jump right in. Let's see here. Do that.
Who are you?
Oh, who am I? Sorry. It's not consequential. I'm Sandra Howard, and my husband Dennis and I, we're proud to lead this group of folks, and you'll get to see a picture of them very soon. But it was a wonderful team. We got along great. Nobody got sick. Everybody, had a really good time. So we thank God for that. So just kind of put you in the place of what you're seeing here. This is the wall right outside of the back kitchen of the church, and they have this chalkboard on it, and they change what it says on a regular basis. They think that's a way of witness to the people who come to get water. The water structure is right here, right next to this. There's a doorway, and then there's sinks where people come and fill up their jugs with water. So this says, "The blessing of God be with you all. And welcome, hermanos, brothers and sisters in this case." So they change that often. We've talked about moving the place where you get water with a new sink built out towards the road. But we've been told by our senior warden and others that this is a ministry, that they come back to the bats, they see the sign, they know that they're welcome there. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of the trip. And a lot of you are very aware of this because you have helped by collecting medicines and supplies for us to take. We took probably about 350 pounds of medicines. We took about 400 pounds of food. And then we took other supplies that they asked for, like a laptop for the church to use so that they could have it for communication purposes, so that they could use it to record attendance and keep track of their budget. So we were happy to bring all of these supplies with us. And we took St. John's annual contribution. This year, that was $5,500 US, which we converted to euros, and we took it to the countryside. And that's what they use for their ministries for a whole year.
Wow.
For a whole year. And in the old days, sorry, I get real emotional whenever I start this. I'll calm down in a little while. But in the old days, they used it for ministries, like they bought materials for classes, and they took trips. The children had a youth camp, but they can't do that anymore because now they have to use it for food, primarily for food to support all of the families in the church, approximately 50 families, and they spread it among the whole community. It's not just our little companion parish, San Pedro Apóstol. It is spread throughout the community, and anybody can come and get the water, and they don't have to pay. So it really is a ministry. So we took our $5,500, and we took a few living waters parts that we picked up actually in Havana, because now we have this wonderful storage area in a little community called Luyano. It's in a Presbyterian church, and the living waters folks from here were able to get parts and pieces that go to the living water system and put them in this storage area at the church in a very safe place. So now when we go, they just let us know what they need. And we stop by in Havana, and before we go to the countryside, we pick up parts. Yes, ma'am.
Sandra, you said you took a lot of food. Was it all dried so it would last a while, or how did?
Well, I'll tell you what we took. Sure, and please feel free to interrupt, because that helps us just answer the question as it happens. We took pasta, we took black beans, Vienna sausages, Spam, coffee.
So the government's not giving them the beans and rice anymore?
We didn't have to take rice because they can get rice. but there's a shortage of everything. The Cuban people have a ration book, just like they used to have in World War II. And they have a ration book, and they're supposed to be able to go and get oil. That's another thing we took, was jars of oil. But they're supposed to be able to get, all the necessities, but the government doesn't have enough of anything anymore. So this is the first time that our senior warden said, please bring food and make sure you bring enough for 50 families. So whatever you do, get 50 of whatever you get. So we thankfully went with Amelia, who is our senior warden, Aurora's daughter, who lives here in Tallahassee, and she took us to Walmart and said, that. So we did exactly what she told us, and we got 50 of everything, and that was 400 pounds of food that we took to them. And it's not going to last them any time at all. It's been gone for weeks probably, but we were able to give them something that they haven't had for a while. So and then the main purpose of our trips to Cuba are to continue to build our relationship. We've had this companion relationship since 1999, when Josephine Newton was our first missionary from St. John's. And this was our 31st trip to Cuba since 1999. And it's the relationships are so strong that it's like going to the best family reunion you've ever attended. We just love these folks, they love us back, and it's terrific. So, moving on. Any more questions right now about?
How are you able to transport all of that?
You can check 2 bags for free on Southwest Airlines, thanks be to God. Used to have to pay for all those bags, Now we flew on Southwest out of Tampa, and so we each could check 2 50-pound bags, and then we had a carry-on and an extra personal, bag like you usually do. And quite a few of us put things in our carry-on. The laptop was in my carry-on. So we try to put things wherever it makes the most sense, and we could take that much poundage because we had 8 people. Okay. Yes.
You may want to hold questions until the end so we get through.
Okay. We can do that too. Here's our travelers. So this was across the street in the parking lot just before we left. This gentleman, who you may not recognize, is Steve Pessa. He is the rector of Christ Church Monticello, and Christ Church Monticello has a companion church 5 miles away from our church. It's in Cuatro Esquinas. It's called Cristo Rey, Christ the King. It's kind of nice, Christ Church, Christ the King. And it was his first trip to Cuba, and he was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. He helped in so many ways. He even preached at our worship service. So you probably know the rest of us, and most of us will speak this morning. And 5 out of 8 had never been to Cuba, so we like that too. We always like to take people who haven't been before, and they have the whole experience of, what goes on when we go to Cuba. So that is my time. Okay, who's up next?
Okay. All right, good track. All right, so I can pay attention. So I'm Chris Schoonover. For those of you who don't know me, my family's in the back, my daughter Liberty. So I'm on vestry. I oversee the children and family ministry. So that's what I spend most of my time on. But this was my first time to Cuba. I went to Ecuador this past summer as a chaperone on the youth mission trip. So I felt like this was a good opportunity to do something a little bit different, and to see, for me, since we've been members of St. John's, we had heard so much about how much we invest in time and energy and money into this community in Cuba. And as I mentioned when I gave the update, we all hear about Cuba, you see fancy pictures, you see Havana. It was eye-opening to me. It's when she says the countryside, it literally is a very bumpy 4-hour van ride to the middle of absolutely nowhere, where it's just dirt roads. So, but we did spend a lot of time, as Sandra mentioned, developing relationships with the church leadership there. Lots of breakout sessions, and we had Yosmael was our translator in the blue shirt. Praise be to God to him, because I speak no Spanish, and so he was awesome. And he actually works for the Living Waters system program down there, so he kind of oversees everything, so he knows it very well. But Sandra already mentioned it. The food and medicine shortages were very, very legit, and especially the pharmacy medicines. When you say, what medicines did you bring? It wasn't prescription drugs. It was everything from children's Tylenol and Advil to adult aspirin. And everything you can think of, Band-Aids, they just don't have access to that. There's no way. They can't just go on Amazon like we can and get it delivered to their home. there's just nothing they can do. So if they don't have it, there's probably no way for them to get it. Let's see. So here's an example. So this is the pharmacy in Zorrilla. There's not much there. I mean, there's a lady who works at a shop, and that there's nothing. So I'm not sure, the purpose of it. So, you can't just walk down the street. You can't just walk down the street if you need, for me, if I need, children's Advil, I ain't gonna get it. So, so I could, that shows you how critical it was for us to bring those items down there, because unlike food, medicine will last a little bit longer, obviously. They were very grateful. And this is the water this is what the water treatment system looks like, that is put in by Living Waters. And I know Tyler's here, and he could probably get up here and tell you every single part and what it does. But this is this is what cleans the water, and it makes it safe to drink. They use it to wash all their dishes and pots and pans. You can't just use your kitchen sink. It's not clean, so because it would be bacteria left on the goods. You can't wash your fruits, vegetables, nothing. So thank God we have this there, because and they're all throughout Cuba, obviously, in many different churches. But you have to go to brush your teeth with this water. I mean, it's crazy to think about the way you have to kind of live your life. And the community members, you saw the first picture, they come from throughout the day. I saw the same people numerous times a day, and they would walk up with these tons of jugs, and they would sit there and fill them. And later on in the day, you'd see them again. And it was some of the folks were younger kids, and they were helping out some of the older community members who obviously couldn't carry weight like that, and they would deliver them. So, but this is something that we support. We do. And if you can't live without water, plain and simple. You need water to live. So, because of us, we help these people survive. You saw so the way it works is the water gets funneled through, processed, and then we have these. This is at San Pedro Apóstol, our church. There's these big water tanks, and when we got there, we were talking with Juan Carlos, and we were talking in USML, and he was pointing out this is the kind of structure they use to hold these massive water tanks of the clean water after it's funneled through, because that way it uses gravity for the pressure. And it's hard to tell, but you can see this was made of rebar, steel. 10 years, what they say was 10 years ago. And it's degrading. They pointed out how bad it was. And you can see there's a crack line forming between this. This is a piece of steel, and it sits in there, elements, rain and everything. 10 years later, it is on the verge of collapsing. It could happen. They were like, it could happen any day. We don't know. And these people walk underneath it all day, and that'd be terrible. And then there's like clay cisterns underneath it that would be shattered and broken. So through St. John's, after talking with them while we were at the trip, we made the commitment to them to go ahead and pull, to make the decision, because they said it takes time to get the necessary building supplies to rebuild it. We just found out from this morning that they are going to start, they found the goods, the cement, everything, and they're going to start construction on that probably today or tomorrow. So, but if that were to collapse, it would be devastating. It would take months and months and months, probably a year, to try to figure out what to do, and the water system would be shut down. And where would those people go? They can't just get in their car and drive to the next town. There are no cars. So I'm glad they're doing that. That's something we told them to go ahead and do. It's critical. And then I'm done.
So the next few slides are talking about both some of the things that we did as a community, but also some of the things that the church does for the community of Zorrilla. And so the town of Zorrilla is quite small. The church is in many ways a central hub for people to come, not surprisingly, because it's the only place they can get clean water, but also because it provides education, support, and fellowship. And so one of the things that is really important, as we talked about building relationships, is the community that the church has, and the ministries that they do. And so in these two pictures, it shows some of the activities of a small group of us went to different shut-ins homes in the community and prayed with people. It meant a lot to them to have their companion parish, whether they were parishioners of Zorrilla, but also to have Steve Pessa, a priest, with us. And it was a really wonderful thing for some of these people who aren't able to get out to have. But also it should be mentioned that Aurora, the senior warden, we keep mentioning her, and you'll see a picture of her later on. She wears many, many hats. She is a strong, amazing woman. And she has special dispensation from the bishop in Cuba to be a lay minister with pastoral responsibility. And so one of the things that she does is really hold the community together by checking on people, by distributing the food and medicines that we brought. That was just one of the many things that she does. But she also goes to people and prays with them and is with them. And so this was one of the many important things that we got to do. Teaching in this picture here, we just happen to be, it's Betsy and me teaching this group of children. This building, which you'll see in some of the other slides, is directly adjacent to the main church in Zorrilla. So it's just the house next door. And this is a building that was recently acquired, and more on that later, but it's an extra space for teaching, for classes and Bible study and things like that. But it's also a wonderful place for the kids to gather. They fit really nicely in there. And in this moment, we were teaching them a song, and they tried to teach us and showed us some songs too. So it was a really wonderful moment where we were able to give to each other there. And so worship, obviously, this is a small angle sort of view, but this is a very narrow area of the church sanctuary. And so the church at Zorrilla is a little sort of house, but it's split halfway down. And so one side is a couple of rooms and a bathroom, and the other side is the sanctuary. And so it's very narrow. There's maybe 5 people across can stand. And so this was a picture, I think, on our either first or second day there. And of course, we went during Lent. And one of the first things that we learned is that every day while we were there, they had planned for us to pray the Great Litany together. So strong, hardcore Episcopalians will know the Great Litany during Lent. We usually only do it once. They did it every day. And what was so fun, of course, is the whole thing was in Spanish. So we were looking at our Book of Common Prayer and praying all these supplicamos or whatever, líbranos, mi Señor, or whatever. It was wonderful and stirring to pray a liturgy that many of us know very well in a different language with these people. So we had services, and that was an element of the service. We also did some singing, and you'll see that too. And so the last slide of all of these sort of different activities is fellowship, of course. And so this is the area that Sandra was describing at the beginning. You can see that's the whiteboard. This is a storage area. And here's the water cistern tanks with the structure that is currently failing. Right behind this woman are 2 spigots from which people can get their clean water. But this outside patio area is pretty much where all of the community gathering happens. It's where all of the meals are had. It's where prayers are prayed. It's where people just sit. I mean, when we had downtime, some of us would just sit out there and stroke all the stray dogs that came by. So many chickens, roosters, those roosters are something else. And so it's just a space right behind the kitchen. And so this is just one moment where a community of parishioners came together and were praying before a meal. And so we can't emphasize enough how important this togetherness is when that's what people value the most. And Betsy couldn't be here today, but she wanted me to convey that this was also the scene of a wonderful karaoke moment where on our very last night, we thought that there was going to be a worship service because we saw people gathering. We're like, oh, let's get out of the way. We want to leave them to it. Turns out they were having a party for us, but nobody told us. So all of us left to give them space. And then we came back, I don't know, an hour later, and they said, where have you been? So we gathered in the back for a party that lasted into the wee hours of the night with lots of karaoke, Celine Dion. It was a wonderful, wonderful, joyful time. So, all right, and now Bob and Jan.
I'm Bob Porter, and my wife Jan and I were a member of this group or crew that went to Cuba. Jan is not here today, but I'm going to share some remarks with you. And first, I want to say that Chris has an international reputation now for finding the exact best cell phone spot in Zorrilla. So, they have 3G phone service, And of course, it didn't always jive well with our 5G phones. Most of the time it didn't. The building you see in this slide is the newest addition to the church we partner with in Zorrilla. It originally was a house next door to the church. They have taken all of the interior walls out, painted and cleaned it up. Now they have a larger space for all the uses that Marissa mentioned. It has a nice grassy area in the back for activities with the children, and it's got a nice path from the existing church as well. It may not look like much to us, but please look at it carefully. It's special. It was acquired with memorial gifts to St. John's honoring Linwood Arnold. Sandra, would you tell us who Linwood Arnold is?
Linwood Arnold was a parishioner of St. John's, a lovely man who went to Cuba with me. I think it was the time we were first looking at the water system. And Laura Arnold's back here in the back. Laura and her daughter Mia decided that when Linwood passed away, they wanted to do something to honor him and to honor how he felt about Cuba. And so people gave their memorial gifts, and thanks to those memorial gifts, we were able to buy this building right next door. And the people were so grateful, and you're seeing it now a year after they purchased it. They painted it, they put new benches in it. They're doing all kinds of things, as Bob said, inside of it. But we owe this addition to the church property to Laura and Mia having the foresight to honor Linwood in this way.
Well, the night we had a service there, it was packed with children, adults, and amazing music, would you say?
Yes.
Now, for the second bullet, I think we're supposed to be seeing a seed press.
Oh, I didn't have a picture of one, so maybe you guys
Okay.
just describe it.
All right, I will. Okay. A seed oil press. Now, you have no idea how creative these folks are to make a living, and our companion churches are community leaders in this effort. The Los Arobas circuit of the three churches at one time owned a seed press, which was used to extract oil that was used by parishioners and also sold to support the churches. Sesame grows well in this area of Cuba year-round, and there is a great shortage of cooking oil in the country. So it's also costly. 1 liter of cooking oil costs half of the average monthly income of a family. Interestingly, while they abound with the source, cooking oil was one of the items they asked we bring them. So the old press finally broke and cannot be repaired. Who knows how old it was? Father Juan Carlos and the San Pedro Vestry in Zorrilla are very interested in purchasing a new press, which could be housed in this new building. Sale of the oil would be a source of financial support for the church and also provide employment for parishioners. So they are now looking in to make this happen. Most commercial grade presses are sold by Alibaba, the huge Chinese conglomerate, and getting it into Cuba poses another challenge. Yet the determination is there, and a lot of different ways are being explored for funding and delivery. Yasmel, our interpreter from Living Waters, had some good information for Father Juan Carlos, so hopefully next year we'll have a photo of the seed oil press for you to see, or at least some better news on its progress. The last bullet, future trips. Do we have a last bullet? Okay, well, there is going to be a future trip. Tyler McMillan plans to lead a small group of parishioners back to Cuba in November to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Living Waters for the World System in Zorrilla, and the one in Cuatro Esquinas. He will confirm that the 3 systems that St. John's helped to install are working properly, and will conduct additional training for the water system operators and church leaders. Again, the value of living waters in Cuba and throughout the world is immense and critical. If you aren't familiar with it, go home and Google Living Waters for the World. We promise that you'll be proud that we're involved. The citizens of our sister communities depend on it for clean water to drink and cook with. They patiently walk and bring their jugs to fill. Sometimes we take for granted that we just go to the tap and turn it on. You know, it's great. Sometimes we took showers. They would just give us a bucket of water and a pitcher. And that was how we did our showers, but at least the water was clean. St. John should be especially proud of Tyler and his training and work, as well as the mission teams that go annually. If you have any interest, please consider going to Cuba under the leadership and guidance of Dennis and Sandra Howard. And this has to be one of the best programs that provides assistance in Cuba, bar none, we think. These wonderful people depend on us for so much, and it does not go to waste. It's kind of like the saying, they squeeze a dollar out of a dime. Most of all, the minute you hit the ground, you feel the love. And I must say that those of us who traveled to Cuba got much more from our visit than we gave or expected. Thank you.
And now there's a just short video with some pictures and clips from our time there with some captions, so you can see a little more of the Cuban countryside. Yeah, David, would you?
That's Aurora in the front.
The first one, the glasses, yeah.
They have been praying a lot for you and this group.
Yeah.
Así que se nota porque Dios está muy bien.
That's it. You want to
Can I ask you a question?
questions? Yeah,
What about medical coverage?
The state provides their medical coverage, all of it. The problem is that the government pays for it.
The government, yes. The problem is they have universal health coverage,
Right.
but they don't have medicines, they don't have surgical supplies, they don't have what we have here in the state. So,
Just an example, there's a parishioner in Zorrilla who needs surgery. She needs to have a hysterectomy. She's been waiting months because although they have an excellent medical system, they don't have any supplies. She has to find the surgical equipment, has to buy it wherever she can find it and bring it with her to be able to have her surgery. And fortunately, we were able to get some help from parishioners who have medical contacts, and so we're hoping that she'll be able to be treated. But that's just one example of how bad things are.
Don't they have to bring their linens too?
they have to
the
bring their
hospital?
linens, their nightgowns.
Food.
When they have a baby, they have to bring everything the baby's gonna need, diapers and clothing and all the rest of it. So there's a place they can go to get the medical care, but the people themselves provide a lot of the supplies that are necessary. Pam?
I just wanted to add something. Chuck and I were lucky enough to go several years ago. And I have never seen people so poor and underprivileged, but so happy and so loving. That's what really got to us. But I also wanted to add something that I learned over there. One of the things I did was interview people as they came to get water. One of the amazing things is the men said their decrease in kidney stones since bringing water to Cuba. It was amazing. So there's so many more things to learn about this. I encourage all of you, help, give, learn. Thank you.
There seems to be spiritual optimism. Is there any economic optimism anywhere? I mean, this is 3 generations of communist government, but it seems like, I agree, spiritually, they seem, I was moved, but economically.
No, it's not, there's nothing very positive at all. And we didn't talk about the immigration, but.
Yeah, but I would say, beyond the spiritual wealth of the church, there is a very entrepreneurial system that is being primarily the vision of our senior warden, Aurora. And her goal is to try to make the church self-sustainable. And this idea of having a seed press would do both giving jobs to the people there, giving them a sense of employment that matters, and at the same time would provide food for the community. What Aurora told us was, we want to be able to not have to depend on you, but we always want to be able to depend on your friendship and your fellowship. So there are pockets of this. They're very entrepreneurial people, and they just need a little leg up to get going.
What is the cost of this seed grant?
Father Juan Carlos said he thought it was between $3,000 and $5,000. But then there's
Getting
shipping,
it over there.
and there is the entry fees at the port, and so we don't really know what the total is. Francine, I think you had.
Oh, I wanted to ask, the St. John's gift of $5,500, is that from the budget, or do you
Yes.
raise that money?
Yes, it's part of the general operating budget of the church and has been for many, many years. It has grown in size a bit, but it has, it started, I think, at $3,000, and that might have been 15 years ago, and it has grown over time, and now it's $5,500. But it is, and we also have designated funds. When people give us gifts, like for Living Waters, when Tyler's getting ready to go on a trip and people want to support that, we have a designated fund that is Cuba Living Waters, and people can make contributions to that, and that helps Tyler to be able to purchase the supplies he needs and to take the trip to maintain the systems.
Sandra, you might also point out how the funding of the participants works.
So if you wanted to go to Cuba, for instance, over the years, we've gotten to a point where we think it's about $1,200 a person for us to go to Cuba. Luckily, we're in Florida. We don't have as far to go as a lot of people do. So what we have set up is, a third of that should come from the traveler himself or herself. A third has generally been given raised by fundraising events, and the last third from the designated fund that is set up within the chart of accounts. However, this trip, we paid 2/3 with the designated funds because we had the money to do it, and we didn't feel the need to do a major fundraiser right before we went, although we did reserve the right to have a fundraiser later on. I want to replenish some of that money, but that's about $1,200. So when we traveled, each of us paid for our plane ticket and we paid for our visa. So that was a little bit more than a third of what it cost. I did want to say, there was one bullet that said something about immigration, I think. One of the saddest things right now in Cuba is that there are very old and very young and not much else. I mean, our church in Los Arabos that Tyler and Dennis helped to put in a system. I don't know, I can't remember who was on that trip, but it has 22 members now, and it's the largest of the 3 churches. That middle range, the people who played in the band for us every time we went, that wonderful praise band, most all of them are here in the United States now. They've left the country, and a lot of them leave their children and with their grandparents or family members until they can get established, and then they try to bring their kids back. But it's dramatic. If you looked at those services, you saw a lot of elderly people, and then you saw a lot of children. Well, that's really predominantly what's left. So, yes, ma'am.
Is there government interference, or what is the relationship of you all with the Cuban government or the church?
The church?
Yeah.
Well, it's changed over the years. And for a while, you may remember last year, the cross was down and off the door, and the sign that said San Pedro Apóstol was down off the door because the government had said you're not an official church and so you can't look like one. Well, when we got there this time, the cross was back up and the sign is back up. So it shifts, But what I think is, personally, is that the government recognizes that we come and help, and that helps their people. And they're not going to refuse that. And so they're loosening up a little bit. And there's lots of churches of various kinds in Cuba. Catholic churches is still very prominent. But anyway, that's.
They send health inspectors to check the water systems, which is kind of interesting, which they've always passed with flying colors.
Tyler, would you stand up? So this, if you guys don't know, this is Tyler McMillan. Tyler has led the installation of 5 different water systems in Cuba. The 3 in our the Los Arabos circuit that we go to visit every time. But also Tyler was instrumental in installing the one that was in Ceballos, which is the companion church of Holy Comforter. And it's not real close to where our churches are, but Tyler and a team of people, the Shields were on that trip when we installed in. Chuck helped with that installation as well. So then there's another place that's in a suburb of Havana, Guanabacoa, that we helped a Presbyterian church from Jacksonville who had never made an installation, and they were a little nervous, so they brought the pro. and so anyway, Tyler, as you've heard, is going to go back again. Plans to do that in November. November is the 10th.
That was the Presbyterians and Episcopals got together, and we installed it in the Baptist camp. It's a multi-denominational.
Sounds like a joke.
Yeah. It's an awesome ministry. proud to be part of it.
Right.
That's great.
Do they pay any taxes?
Thank you for all your.
Do they pay taxes?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah. May I just tell you one other wonderful thing about our companion church? So we had a pretty lengthy meeting with their vestry.
Right.
Our whole team, we met with the vestry, and thanks be to God for Yosmael. He was our translator, and he translated everything, and we learned all about what they were doing, and that's when we handed over the financial contribution and talked about what their hopes and dreams were. But towards the end, they told us that some people, when they come to get their water, actually give a few coins. They want to do that. So they don't require it, but people do. So a whole community gives a little bit. And then we were talking about their budget, and they said, well, you know, we don't get very much because, you know, we can pledge, our members pledge, but they don't pledge very much. And we said, so I think Betsy might have said, so what percentage of your membership pledges? Oh, everybody. Everybody. We said, every person in the church pledges, and they give more on top sometimes because they want to, you know, help the ministries of the church. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Laura, did you?
So did you want to mention really quickly about infant mortality, how it went down after we put the water?
Yes, the water systems now, it's been 10 years, as Tyler said. The children are so much healthier. Not only are they healthier, they're growing a lot bigger. When we first started going to the countryside, they were really pretty, you know, stunted. Yeah, that's the word, really. But now the kids are growing taller. Bigger than their parents. Their teeth are much stronger. They're just generally so much healthier. Everything about them, the infant, like you said, the infant mortality has really changed. And we take things like colic medicine that they've never been able to have, and other medicines for their young children. And they all have, well, not all, but a lot of the children have asthma, problems with asthma. The roads aren't paved in most places. They're dusty, there's dust everywhere. And so we take, if you guys contributed, you know, that we took medicine that was gonna help with breathing and, you know, that sort of thing. Yes, ma'am.
When they run out of the food that y'all take, what do they fall back on? I mean, what do they eat?
Well, they can get rice, and sometimes they can get beans. I don't think they eat meat hardly at all. You know, we took packages of tuna fish and Vienna sausages and Spam because it was easy to carry and that sort of thing. That food has been gone forever. I mean, it probably was gone a week or so after we left there. So they just rely on what they can get. They have gardens.
Yeah, the gardens, they grow vegetables and stuff, but not at a level, we've actually tried to work with them to try to bring gardening and farming up. It's very interesting. All that got industrialized in the country years ago, and so the concept of having your own garden for food went by the wayside when you were being given those vegetables. And so there's kind of almost this generational thing of not knowing how to have a garden and for food, and there's more and more of it going on, but there is a lot of fresh vegetables, pineapples, things like that, but still, if you don't have something to trade for it, you have to pay for it, and if you don't have money to pay for it, then.
Well, and yeah, it's really a hard thing for them. We learned when Tyler and Sabrina and I were there last year that they can't get pesticides, they can't get fertilizers. All of that goes to the government crops. So if you're gonna do your own garden, you know, you're gonna have pests all the time. So that's part of the problem, you know, to grow a garden where you can be resistant to pesticide.
Are there any other Episcopal churches here in the States who go there?
Yes.
During the year?
Yes, actually, the Diocese of Florida, which is, you know, basically northeast Florida, there are probably 30 companion relationships. Not all of them are active anymore, especially since COVID came. But but yes, I would say, I mean, like Holy Comforter, they go regularly. Christchurch, Monticello. So, you know, some of the folks from Advent have been. We took some folks from Advent one time.
Pontevedra is very active.
Pontevedra is very active. Jacksonville has a church that's very active. not, you know, so yes, there are other Episcopal churches, and this diocesan relationship with Diocese of Florida and Diocese of Cuba started back 95 or something?
Earlier,
Way,
even
way
earlier.
back.
Yeah, no, I was on the diocesan committee
And
in
what-
95, 94. It was already well established, early 90s.
And as I said, our first trip was 99, so we came on the end of that. Any other questions? We don't want to. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you mentioned 3G phones and a laptop, but how is the electricity?
It's fine. Unless you're in Quebec, then it doesn't go down. But there's rolling blackouts in the countryside all the time, which also presents a huge problem for the water system, because you need electricity to run that. But, yeah, it's not as good in the countryside.
I would imagine immigration is on the low side, isn't
Immigration?
it? Immigration.
Into the country.
Into the country?
I went into the country.
No, I don't think there's much at all in immigration.
No, no, no.
Yes.
If you were to mail like a bulk bean thing, would that make it to them or probably not?
That's why we always hand carry our contribution to, things just don't make it through a regular mail system, unfortunately.
Yeah, there is a website that some folks have explored where somehow you order food and it gets to them, but I haven't tried it yet. And it's a private, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to, if not close on, there may be other questions, but I just wanted to say on behalf of our sister parish and those of us who've had the privilege of working with them, that this church is really exceptional in the amount of support that it provides to this little parish. And that little parish is really exceptional in what they do, what little we can do with them. So thank you all for contributing. We do a fundraiser sometime. We appreciate more help. And especially we're hoping that we will be able to entice some younger people to go to Cuba and get involved with it. We're kind of getting close to aging out. I don't know how many more 50-pound bags I can carry. But thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you all back in my hand. We're out of here. The other one's back there with Take care. See you next week.
I don't know that it's a lot like to do it.